The mics, okay.
Oh, I need Tricia. No, it's still coming in.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Mark Wigler, and I will bring the meeting, the chair, I will bring the Budget Subcommittee to order at 6:11. What I would like to read is our Zoom technology policy to make sure that everybody is clear. We also have this on YouTube. So consistent with the governor's language and removal of the emergency order, the public is invited to attend school committee meetings in person or in real time via Zoom technology by clicking on the link below. We have a link that was actually on the document. It's actually on the homepage, Quabbin's homepage. This meeting will be recorded and will be posted to YouTube and other social media platforms. By participating in this meeting, you understand that the recording could contain your video stream or your audio stream, including images of yourself or anyone in the room with you, if you choose to enable your video or audio device during the meeting, as well as anything or anyone else that may be in the background could be recorded. The recording could include any opinions you contribute and anything you say about yourself. On occasion, chat within the meeting could also be captured in the meeting recording. Therefore, anyone attending the recorded meeting may have aspects of their personal data recorded if they actively participate or not. That's by state law. We have to read that. I will now ask for a roll call.
Yep. Mr. Wigler,
Here.
Mr. Nutter,
Here.
Mrs. Chamberlain. Mrs. Chamberlain.
She's gone.
Lost her.
Yeah, she's gone. Okay.
Mr. Kelly. Mrs. Thompson. I'll let her know. She might not know we lost her. She's back. Mrs. Chamberlain, you're back. Okay.
Okay, we will now begin, now that we have everybody on, we will now begin the first meeting of the Quabbin Budget Subcommittee for the year. And this will be primarily a preliminary FY 23-24 budget discussion. And I'll turn it over to Cheryl.
Did you want to start with anything?
Well, just to set the context for the meeting, Cheryl has been working tirelessly over the last several weeks after getting input from all of our cost center administrators as to budget requests to put together this preliminary presentation as to things that we feel that we need for operation of the school district and to work to accomplish our goals for next year. Cheryl has a lot of detail in the presentation, as she always does. So I'm not going to, spend a great deal of time reiterating things that Cheryl will present, but certainly if there are questions along the way, Cheryl, are we taking questions along the way? Participants can, if you're participating virtually, you can either put a question in the chat. We will monitor the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, we will certainly try to call on you as quickly as we can. And certainly in the room, we have a couple of participants here, and certainly feel free to just let us know if you have any questions.
Just a point of question. The documents that we referenced tonight will be on the Quabbin QRSD website probably by the end of the week?
Hopefully by tomorrow.
By tomorrow? Okay, so anything that we referenced tonight will be on the main Quabbin website as of tomorrow.
So could you share your screen?
Just have to hit share.
Not that good.
Okay, thank you for coming tonight. I know that the 3 members of the subcommittee have heard this presentation time and time again. But for other members of the audience, I do want to start right from the beginning as we go through our presentation. So we build our presentation, we build our budget based on the goals that we have and our other parts of our strategic plan, which aren't available at this time, but will be incorporated later as we go along. So we do have budget development goals of accountability and transparency, and we try to make sure that what we do is understood by everyone involved. We also need to follow the Department of Elementary and Secondary standards and indicators when it comes to budget building. One of their goals in financial and asset management is that our documents are clear, they're comprehensive, and they are aligned to the district's goals, including student achievement goals and educator effectiveness goals. Our budget needs to be created through an open and participatory process. The district pursues and secures resources to improve education, and the district effectively manages its financial and capital assets and does appropriate long-term planning. So these are the goals that we try to meet as we build our budget right from the first budget presentation.
Okay.
So our budget development is driven by district and school plans, student outcomes need to be used in both. Our student need drives our resource allocation to our schools, and we hope to have stakeholders involved in our budget development. We don't have a roaring crowd here tonight, but we do have a few people here tonight. Our budget document and related formal presentation documents are meant to be clear and have useful summaries as well as financial detail, and I'm sure that at least the committee members will agree. I provide quite a bit of documentation. Our summary includes a narrative, and that will become along later as we go through our budget cycle. And we also include trends of information for several years in our budget documentation. And the school committee will hold its public hearing in early March. The principles that guide our budget development, we make sure that our budget aligns with the district's mission, vision, and core values and our theory of action. Right now, there is a subcommittee working on the district's new strategic plan. So as we build this, we're keeping that in mind, although those documents aren't available for tonight's presentation. We try to provide sustainability in meeting or exceeding the strategic objectives that come from our strategic plan. We make sure that our budget aligns with the district's improvement plan and each individual school improvement plan. The budget should reflect the priorities of the school committee. It takes into consideration our student enrollment as well as stagnant revenue sources. We try to be proactive rather than reactive, and we try to clearly communicate our budget to all stakeholders. Our budget building process starts with our plan for success, which is the new term we have for our strategic plan, of which is built of strategic objectives. And then the budget is actually the fiscal spending plan by which to advance or attain completion of the district's strategic objectives. So there is a rhyme to our reasoning. Our objective of our budget in order to achieve those district goals is to use the best of all resources, our people, our time, our space, and our money. I'm starting this year's presentation with a look at other funds that support the FY24 operating budget, because by no means is this the budget that does everything for our district. We have a number of other funding sources that we use to complete our mission. For example, we have a number of revolving accounts and grants that have staffing and transportation included. So the school nutrition program is solely on its own. It receives no operating money to fund that. And this year we have 18.6 people working in that department at a total salary of just shy of $500,000. We do post a number of teaching positions off to the school choice revolving account. The reason that we chose to use school teacher salaries in school choice revolving account is because there's a very clear audit trail. So nothing other than transportation and salaries are charged to school choice for the most part. For next year, we're looking at spending about $2.4 million from school choice for positions in our district. We have a school property use account, which pays for 2 personnel staff members. They're actually custodians to the tune of $75,000. We have the ESSER 3 grant, which is the elementary and secondary education what's the R for? Something grant.
Recovery.
That was actually came into play last year and goes into the early beginnings of FY25. This year, we have 12 people in that grant. We're expecting those same 12 people to be paid for by the grant next year at a tune of almost $700,000. Our largest special education grant is the 240 grant. We have 8 people staffed in that grant for $500,000. We have an early childhood grant that pays for 1 paraprofessional in our preschool. And we have the Title I grant, which is mostly used for education in our Title I schools, but we have our 3 intervention specialists paid by the Title I grant. We also use our school choice revolving account to pay for 4 buses that pick up school choice students that attend Quabbin. So the total of that revenue source is almost $5 million, $4.7 million. As a point of interest, I do provide for you the latest report, which is the balances as of December 31st in all of our revolving accounts. So the public can see what we have for revolving accounts. And I do the same for our grant awards. We do have a number of grants, but grants aren't run like they used to be where you have a grant for 1 year. Many of our grants have multiple years that they are for. And so we actually list what the duration of each of our grants are. And all of those positions I just spoke of would be reported out of these grants. I'd like to start our budget presentation by looking at our enrollment. Who are we building the budget for? This year's October 1st enrollment in our district is the official enrollment of the district and is used to calculate the Chapter 70 funding or the state aid funding for the next school year. And there are 3 different enrollment types that we talk about when we talk about our student body. We have a resident enrollment. Those are the students enrolled in our district who live in the 5-member communities. We have 1,936 residents attending our schools this year. We have school enrollment, which are all of the students who are enrolled in district schools. So those are the resident students that are enrolled in Quabbin, school choice students who come here, and any students who are tuitioned in. We have none of those for this school year. And our district enrollment are all the students who are served by the district. In any year, that can be students who are in our district schools, students attending out-of-district placements that are our residents or school choice students, students who receive services only, of which we have none reported this year, and students who we are financially responsible for. Usually those are special education students. So a quick look at our resident enrollment. Unfortunately, we had a little increase last year, but we're seeing a decrease of 25 students this fiscal year over last school year. I have data for 20 years on enrollment that are not part of the presentation, but are certainly available. And we are actually, over 20 years, we're down 1,000 students in our district. I have a little graph that will show that trend. But more importantly, I have a line graph that shows just how steep that declining enrollment has been since fiscal 2005. And the red part of this graph indicates what our projected enrollments are based on a study that we had done by NESDEC a few years back. You can see we started with a little uptick. Most of that 1,961 students, that high increase, was because we started counting pre-K students. We could not count pre-K students if we charged tuition. So we stopped charging tuition a couple of years ago, got them into our student enrollment, and got a greater amount of state aid than we were getting for tuition. That was a strategic decision by the school committee. Our school enrollment, just a comparison for the last 3 years, we're actually down from last year, but up a few from the year before. So we're 51 students down from last school year, but 77 students up from 2021. Over 20 years, still down over 1,000 students. In these graphs here, you can just take a look at my note that in FY23, New Braintree Grade School houses students in pre-K from New Braintree and Ocam and our post-grad program. That's a special ed program for students who are age 20, between 18 and 21, and they are housed in New Braintree and reported as such to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. This is our school enrollment trend over the years. Pretty much mirrors what our resident enrollment has been. I provide for your enjoyment enrollment by grade at each school.
I can call. It's fine.
This year, we have 263 students attending under school choice, and I have for you the sending town, not the district, but the sending town, so that we know where our students are coming from. And a history of school choice enrollment over time. You can see in FY08, so the 2007-2008 school year, we had our largest amount of school choice students at 429, with 263 this year. A common question that we get is, why is school choice going down? If you look at the data, school choice may be going down, but so are resident students and students, school-age students across the Commonwealth. As a percentage of our total enrollment, we have ranged between 11 and 13% over the last number of years. So we're really not losing school choice enrollment as much as we are losing students. List for you a few assumptions and the method that we used in developing the FY24 budget, because there are so many unknowns when we start building our budget and report to you in January. Salaries are our greatest expense because we are a people organization. So positions that are covered by a collective bargaining agreement, our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our custodians, we have 6 different groups. We have included the increased step in the collective bargaining agreement, but no COLA has been applied to any salaries. If we have open or requested position in the teaching ranks, we have chosen that a K-8 teaching position would be budgeted at a master's step 4 of $62,727. But a teacher at the high school level 9 through 12 is budgeted at master's plus 15 at step 5 or $66,194. Salaries for positions that are covered by an individual contract are budgeted at the current rate. Open or requested positions are also budgeted at the current rate or anticipated rate for the position that is open for next year.
I just have a question. When you say budgeted, you mean that's what we're using in the budget, but in reality, somebody with less experience would start at a lesser salary?
Yeah, so what usually happens when you'll see the list of number of positions that we will have open at the end of this school year. And by budgeting those levels that we do, it goes up and down. Sometimes we hire a teacher with a bachelor's degree, it goes down. Sometimes you also have to get a teacher like the physics teacher at a master's 60 and it costs more than we budgeted. But at the end, it all kind of like levels out.
Thank you.
Any positions that are at will, and we have a number of those in our district, are budgeted at the FY23 rate. The reason that we've done it this way is because we're in negotiations with our 6 unions, 5 of which are in the budget or those revolving accounts or grants that I spoke of. And the cost of living increases and anything to do with collective bargaining has been budgeted in a lump sum and not in the salary lines. That just helps us because in the past, believe it or not, the teachers union figured out how much we had in the budget and they were aiming for that percentage. This way, and nobody gets a clue as to what we have available in this budget. The staffing requests are based on positions that will be open due to retirements, or currently we have a few positions that are unfilled right now due to resignations that we just cannot fill. So at this point in time, which always changes between now and June 30th, We have 20.2 positions that are open or will be open due to retirement or resignation. That is a sum of $1.1 million. We also have a number of positions that are requested for next year, and there is some rationale listed for each one of these positions. The principals know how tight our budget will be. We don't know what our revenue sources will be, but they know how tight this budget is going to be. A lot of these may not be here as we work through the next few rounds of our budget, but we're looking at 7.7 positions that have been budgeted in this document at a total request of over $500,000. We have a number of capital requests in our budget. The first one, I know the superintendent has gone out and spoken to select boards and finance committees about our fundraising initiative for the athletic field press box and bleachers. Our current fundraising balance is $6,900, not as great as we had hoped it would be by now. The estimated project cost is $350,000, and that is only based on the quotes that we had gotten pre-COVID on the project and applied the increases due to inflation. But our next steps would be, because a number of these contractors that do this work are on a state bid list, it would be to go out for a request for quote or a bid for the people who are on this state bid that the state has done, and then to discuss financing options. Those would be our next steps on that project. We just recently learned that the chiller at the middle high school needs to be replaced. We had replaced the chiller tower 2 years ago using rural school aid money, but the chiller is now leaking. We have a stopgap measure where they're welding in a piece of material to keep it from leaking, but it's been advised, highly advised, that we look at that project and have that chiller replaced. The estimate at this point is $405,000. I did make the school committee aware of this at their last meeting, and we do again need to talk about financing options for that. This would not fall under the operating budget, but right now it's there because I wanted everybody to know as we're building this budget what we're looking at. We also have a number, I have a spelling mistake, and do I hate that. We have a number of items that have been requested by our principals or our plant and facilities office. We have a need for new cafeteria tables at the middle high school. Mr. Coppolino has done his best to weld the tables together, but there's some that just can no longer be repaired. We hope to refinish the dance room floor. That's the dance room. There's been a request at the middle high school for more student desks and chairs. When we moved the 6th grade up, we cobbled together as much as we could to meet all of our needs, but there is a need for student desks and chairs there. We've been talking for the last several years about doing probably prior to COVID, an engineering study to enclose all the railing systems in our school, which we at one point were written up by the building inspector. We really haven't heard much of that. So that would be on my cut list, but don't tell the building inspector. We have a request from the Plant and Facilities Department, the Buildings and Grounds Department, sorry, Mr. Nutter, for temperature-driven exhaust fans. We need to get a better control on the heat in our building. Oh my God, another spelling mistake. That's what happens when I'm doing it 10 minutes before the meeting, right? The middle school gym floor has not been refinished in a number of years. We had hoped to do it the year after we did the high school, but that's when COVID hit. We will continue to overlay the roof seams on the middle high school, trying to extend the life of that roof. We have a floor replacement project that every year we try to do a couple of rooms or a hallway in each school so that we have a rotation and we don't have a lot to do at once. The plan is to do one floor in Ruggles Lane. I believe it's a hallway in Ruggles Lane. At Hardwick, there's a need for classroom chairs, and in Ocam to refinish 2 classrooms in Ocam. So our building improvement and capital projects total $584,000. So when we put all of that together, I do provide 3 different reports for budgeting. I have what is called the line item budget. I have the line item budget in my book right here, and it is, I believe, 261 pages long. but I've condensed it to a mere 40 pages on an Excel sheet for everyone. That line item budget is then subtotaled by function categories, which is a DESE term on how we report to the state. It's just really a crosswalk between the line item budget and the appropriation control report is what the school committee votes on. The appropriation control report is about 16 categories of expenses. The school committee has determined that is the format by which they will approve a budget or approve transfers between line items. That is required by DESE. The school committee has to have voted on a format by which to approve and transfer a budget. This is what the appropriation control report looks like. It has all of those categories. It compares what this proposed version of number one of our FY24 budget would look like as compared to the current year. I know everybody drops to the bottom line first, so we'll go there. This budget is an increase of 10.4%. 2 weeks ago, an email was going around the business manager listserv, and one of the business managers that I know quite well said, is anybody else looking at a double-digit increase? And so a lot of people are like, yes, we are. Yes, we are. And so somebody has created a Google sheet that we're all putting in what our budget increases are. And in some places, they're much higher than this. But this is what we're looking at when, for example, in plant facilities, all of the supplies that we need have gone up by at least 10 or 12%. So we built that all in. Something for the subcommittee to think about. I provided for you here, if we were to remove things, like we will remove the chiller, it's not part of the operating budget. We will probably ask each of the towns to allow us to borrow for this budget over a number of years rather than take it in one lump sum. To remove that 10.4% increase in this proposed budget drops to 9.3%. If the committee so wishes, like we have done in the past, to put some of our other capital expenses that we've requested on hold, except for the roof seam overlay at the middle high school, I don't suggest we do that. The engineering study, I've already made my comment on that. But if we removed everything else, we'd be looking at an 8.9% increase from where we started tonight.
But this number includes the roof seam overlay be taken out,
No.
or includes it in there?
No, yeah, except for the roof seam overlay and the engineering study, those other capital projects that I ran through total 159.
I agree, that's the most important thing.
Yes,
That's something we have
yes.
to do.
Absolutely, I agree. So I also take a quick look at each one of our appropriation categories and look at what the changes are and provide a little detail of why those costs have changed. So in district administration and legal, the difference from the current year is $16,569 or a 1.7% increase. Mostly that is software licensing costs. There have been a few software programs put into place that have these recurring costs year after year. For example, the whole financial software. That's a $50,000 software package that has maintenance fees to go along with it. We also are seeing a very large increase in our legal services hourly rate, so that has been built in. In administrative technology, the greatest cost of $25,000 in this category is our 3-year renewal on our antivirus software. So that is up in at the end of FY23, we need to pay for that. And also Aspen, which is our student management system, and Microsoft licensing fees. In instructional support, which includes everything that happens in school buildings that has to do with education, it says $1.5 million. That's because that lump sum that we have for negotiating all of our contracts for every employee is in this category, along with any collective bargaining steps and lane changes for staff. There's been an increase in substitute costs. We've had a lot of absenteeism as we've come out of COVID. And so our substitute costs have increased substantially. And our requested positions are in here as they were detailed in an earlier slide. We also have anticipated paper costs. Right now, a paper that used to cost us $23.77 a case is currently today $41 a case. We're implementing a new ELA curriculum that requires a lot of copying rather than textbooks. So we'll be kind of like in the same spot we were when we did Eureka Math a few years ago, where our copying and printing costs go up because we're doing that in lieu of textbooks. And again, in this category, we have a lot of instructional software we use that we have to keep the licensing up on or not use the software. Our transportation contract is actually set. It's set at a 2.5% increase. Why the total is only 2.3 is because we did not increase budgets for McKinney-Vento or homeless transportation or kindergarten transportation. So we have that contract set for next year. In athletics and student activities, the increase is due to athletic coach steps. They also have a step schedule, and the expansion of our unified team season. Was it 2 years ago, Sheila?
Yes.
2 years
Last
ago,
year.
we started a unified athletic team, and what that is, it's a special education athletic team. We are adding it to, I believe, the spring season or the winter season. Was it the winter season?
We added winter.
And also, we have a coach, and that coach does multiple seasons, but these students require one-on-one paraprofessionals when they're in school. So those paraprofessionals have become assistant coaches when they're on the team. So we needed to fund that if we were going to keep the program. In school security, we've actually seen a little bit of a decrease, even though we have a number of lunch and recess monitors that only earn minimum wage. That minimum wage went up to $15 in January. And there was also a change in personnel, which ended up having a slight decrease in that category. In our buildings and grounds area, we're looking at $861,000 increase, but again, that includes that entire list of building improvement and capital projects that I talked about earlier. We do have a heating oil contract that has been awarded. I sent that contract out to 11 different local companies, as well as 2 large companies that had our contract before, took it off of the state bid list. And we only got one true bid because the other one was late, and it went up by 21%. Also included in that group is staff steps in the custodial group and a 10% increase in cost of supplies. In technology, infrastructure, maintenance, and support, we're up $10,000, and that is really due to a department intern. The technology department, I asked the director of technology, did you put an extra staff member in your budget? He goes, should I? I said, should you? He did not, but we do have a department intern that he would like to keep on. In our area of benefits, we have some costs that are known for next year. We have some costs that are not known. Our anticipated health insurance increase, I've budgeted at 5%. It is only a half a year increase because our plan runs from January to December. I won't know those actual costs until August. Worcester Regional Retirement Assessment has been released. That is our real number at $124,000. Retired teachers' health insurance, I contacted GIC last week. They said they're still crunching the numbers. We don't have it yet, so that's anticipated. Workers' compensation insurance, we just got our audit for last year, so I put that number, added that number on for an anticipated cost there. We will know better what our insurances will be because our insurance plan actually for this fiscal year isn't due until March. So when I get the actual costs in for workers' comp, I may take another look at that and see if I can increase it or decrease it based on the actual costs for this year. And we have some anticipated unemployment costs. Fixed charges are really our business insurances. Again, this year's costs won't be known until March, and I will take another look at it for next year and to see if what has been budgeted now makes sense or needs to be adjusted. We have a school choice assessment as well as a charter assessment for students who live in our 5 towns and choose to go to school elsewhere. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education usually release a report in December, so I know what those actual costs are for this year. but they have not done that yet. So it's budgeted at level costs and will be updated with the release of the state budget. Those assessments usually come out with the governor's budget. SC means we're in the special education section of our appropriation control report. Again, there's an increase of $15,000 for legal services and settlements because of the rate increase and the increased need for consultation regarding special education needs. There's also a line for administrative technology and support in special education, and this increase is due to the Aspen and Microsoft licensing fees. And instructional support, which are all the staff and services needed to support students in the classroom, an increase of $126,000 or 2.5%. Those are staff steps, increased special education teacher FTE. We also increased FTEs of some paraprofessionals this year. Superintendent reported on that at the last school committee meeting. We have a very hard time filling paraprofessional positions that are open. So to mitigate some of that need, we asked some of the paraprofessionals that are less than 1.0 if they would increase their FTE. Some of them did, a few chose not to. So we think anyone who has agreed to go to 1.0 this year, we have made that adjustment going forward. Again, the COLAs are not budgeted in the special education lines. They're in that lump sum that I talked about earlier. Special education transportation, the contract is actually up at the end of this year. We do have a meeting with them to renegotiate the contract in February. Our costs are based on where students currently are going right now. So we haven't, it's not that we took last year's budget and made an increase of 29%. It's any buses that had to be added or vans that had to be added last year, where the students are going right now, what those costs are, and we're up 29.4%. Special education tuition out. This is a very large increase in our budget, but the superintendent has been telling everybody about this for a couple of months now. The state agreed and allowed special education schools to increase their tuition rates by 14%. We have to pay that 14%. We're not getting any new revenue to pay for that 14%, but our new governor is trying hard to fully fund circuit breaker, which would help us with that number. Long-term debt service is going down. We only have one project on the books, and that's the middle high school atrium and panel project. That's just going down by $2,100. So again, when we added it all together, this is where we stand, which is the screen that I showed you earlier. So what are our next steps? We will adjust our expenses as they become known. So when we renegotiate the special ed contract, hopefully we'll come to some agreement on February 8th. Otherwise, we may be doing some other negotiation with someone else. Our collective bargaining agreements, when they come to close, anything that has a financial impact will be included with the next round of budget. I'm hoping that GIC will contact us in the next week or so, but definitely by the next meeting for what our assessment will truly be. And the current year's business insurances are up in March, and I will make an adjustment if necessary in those areas as well.
Cheryl, just a quick question. If I remember right, there is a town representative on the final version of the collective bargaining agreement. Is that correct? Is there? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the towns need to elect one representative collectively to sit on the final approval of the collective bargaining agreements.
Of the teachers only, right?
Teachers only, yes.
Okay, so they've already done that or in the process of doing that?
No, we actually had our first meeting with the QRTA to begin negotiations is scheduled for next week, so.
Okay, so then the town will come through with somebody who will be a representative.
We'll be contacting them and asking them to do that. Jess usually does that communication for us.
Okay.
So our next steps as an administration is to review all of our goals and programs and to prioritize those. We may need to reallocate resources as there are changes that happen this year. We believe we'll need to make some cuts in either programming, staffing. Supplies are very little part of our budget, but still. And then we advocate for state and local and federal aid. Looking at our revenue projections, was not able to attend the meeting that the new governor had, but I did read the article that was posted. Governor Healy has announced or did announce at her MMA conference on January 20th. On education, she says that she's committed to fully funding our schools as outlined by the Student Opportunity Act. She's saying that she will meet the needs of charter school reimbursements. Her administration will help districts with the cost of student transportation and would fully fund the McKinney-Vento program for homeless students, which would be a big plus for us. And will support special education, particularly the circuit breaker program. So the circuit breaker program reimburses districts on the cost of special education services after a certain threshold, which is 4 times the foundation budget for students. So I think she's talking about lowering that threshold as well as fully funding it at 75%. Fully funding is not 100%. By law, it's 75%, but that would definitely help us. I provided this slide for people because I thought it's important for people to understand what our Chapter 70 history has been. Chapter 78 is our primary revenue source to fund the district's budget. You can see on the left-hand side how Chapter 70 for Quabbin has changed over a number of years, almost 20 years or 20 more years. It used to be almost 65% of our revenue source for our operating budget. This current year, it's only 49.3% of our budget. And somebody could say, that's because your budget's too big. But if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that our aid has significantly decreased since FY09. And FY09 is actually when there was the crash of the state budget. And the last day of the fiscal year, our aid was cut by $1.8 million, which was then backfilled by federal funds. And since then, we have been getting minimal aid, and that's mainly due to our declining enrollment. So until or unless the district climbs out of hold harmless debt, is what the state calls it, is they've been giving us at least as much as we got last year, if not a little more, regardless that our enrollment went down, until we see an increase in resident enrollment or increases in the low income or English learner subgroups of student population, which really the Student Opportunity Act is funding, we will not benefit from what the Student Opportunity Act is currently providing for other school districts. And this is really the crux of our problem, is we're not getting the aid that other districts are getting to support the endeavors that we're trying to accomplish. So that is the end of my presentation for tonight. We do have an email dedicated to budget questions, comments, and concerns. It's budget@qrsd.org. It automatically gets delivered to me. So if anybody has questions, would like to see more detail, get any reports, please feel free to email at that address.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Any questions from anybody on Zoom? Anything in chat?
No. Do you want me to stop the share? If we can stop the share, we can see on the screen.
Cheryl, when do you envision that we'd be ready for the next meeting per se?
Honestly, Mark, I finished it 10 minutes before the meeting.
No, I mean, no.
I haven't had time to talk to anybody.
I know.
But I mean, we'll be continuing our work here. We won't know anything on the revenue side until the governor's budget's released. We were first under the impression that she would take the entire time that she had, which would be March 2nd. We've now learned she has said that she will release it earlier, but I have not been able to find a date. I did try to search for a date today. So and we won't know any side on the revenue side of what our aid will be, what Chapter 70 will be, what circuit breaker will be reimbursed at, what transportation will be reimbursed at, to have at least a number that we can head towards.
So at that particular point, we might be able to set up another date.
Yeah, usually we have one in mid-February. I'll go see what we did last year, but I think we have one usually in mid-February, and we will know. We'll know a little bit on our revenue side. Historically, when the governor's budget comes out, we generally get more aid from the House and the Senate. I don't want to say that that's going to happen, but I'm hoping that will ring true for this year as well. Let's see what last year was. So we had our first one in January 20th, and our second one was February 10th. So somewhere around the middle of February, you should be able to.
Okay.
I think it's our actual school committee meeting. Our
Oh,
full
there's
committee
On the
meeting.
9th, we have a school committee
I'm not-
meeting.
Then
on the
waiting,
9th.
Should be
waiting
February
till-
9th.
It would probably make more sense to wait till the numbers come out. We will be doing our administrative work, then we can see the revenue side and we can put things together for you.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Anything else, Sheila?
No, I mean, we're hoping to continue to advocate for additional state funding. That, as Cheryl pointed out, that is really the crux of our challenge, is that the state is not funding our district and many other districts like us adequately. And that's what, that it really is the cause for the challenges, both in our local communities as well as in the school district. And again, there is some legislation that I keep talking about, the Rural Schools Commission report. I'm hopeful that that will bring us some more revenue at some point in the future. The legislation for the Rural Schools Commission has been filed by by Representative Blay just within the past week. So I have not actually seen, I saw a draft of the legislation. I've not actually seen the final copy, but, we'll be watching that very carefully. If that were to be funded anywhere near the level that is recommended, it would solve everyone's problems in terms of funding. But even if it's not funded at that level, if it provides us with additional funding, it certainly will ease some of this burden going forward. So we'll be watching that, as well as the governor. We really don't have a lot of information about what the governor is thinking. She has not said a lot about, other than what she said at MMA, which is a little vague. She hasn't said a lot about education funding specifically, other than fully funding the Student Opportunity Act, which we know in some ways it's good news, because it does lead us to believe that she's going to continue the 7-year implementation of that legislation, which ultimately Quabbin will benefit from, because we are actually, this is kind of difficult for me to describe, and Cheryl can probably do a better job, but we're actually behind the scenes getting more funding. It's just that funding through the Student Opportunity Act is being used to close that. At one point last year, we had a $5.4 million hold harmless debt. This year, our hold harmless debt is down to 2.7 million. So if that continues, that debt gap continues to close, when that debt gap becomes zero, then we will start to see some additional funding from Student Opportunity Act. It could happen within a year, but it's unlikely that it will happen quickly enough to affect the revenue for the upcoming fiscal year in any significant way.
But we can make that calculation as soon as the governor's budget comes out.
Do we have anything else?
I don't, Mrs. Raymond's.
Anything else from anybody on Zoom? Again, I want to point out that all the documents that were referenced tonight in the presentation will be on the Quabbin website as of tomorrow, beyond this week. And please feel free, there's a budget at QRSD.org. If you don't understand something that's on there, or you think that something appears to be out of line, please send an email and have your question answered.
I think Mrs. Rain had a question.
Ms. Rain.
When do we expect the governor's budget to show up? Again, I know you told me, but I don't remember, so tell me again.
Well, officially, go ahead, Cheryl. You can.
So what I said was, we were initially told that she would probably take her entire 90 days, which would be March 2nd. She has said it'll come earlier, but I have not found a date of when she said.
Okay.
She announced that at a Mass Municipal Association meeting last week, that she was planning to reveal her local aid numbers sooner than the first week in March, but I don't believe there was a date. I'm just looking in my email too. I don't believe there was a specific date that she, the article that I'm reading from says, promise that municipalities will be notified about key local aid accounts even before she files her first state budget on March 1. So sooner than March 1, hopefully.
I thought that was a bad comment to make. Let us know before she filed it.
Yes.
No other questions? There are no other questions. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second? Deb?
Deb?
Peggy?
Yep.
Motion to adjourn. We need a second.
Yep, Debbie seconded.
Debbie did.
Debbie seconded. Okay. Very good. Meeting adjourned.